I won't wait for you anymore. I'm going to die, but no one cares. Chapter 1. When Theodore came out carrying his suitcase. I was a thin, shrunken bundle, wrapped in a coat, curled up on the sofa. His cold, rigid back only turned slightly once, in the silent light. He still didn't say a single word. He just left like that. I kept my head lowered. Only after a very, very long time did I finally raise it. I looked toward the light outside. It felt like I had been abandoned by the entire world. My husband doesn't want me anymore either. He also thinks I'm rotten to the core, that I don't deserve forgiveness from anyone. My hand trembled as it touched my abdomen. Just a week ago, there was still a 4-month-old little baby here, but it still left quietly. I'm too lonely. I really wanted to have a little baby of my own. I would have taught them how to read, taught them how to sing, taught them to call me mom, but that will never happen now. The title of Mrs. Cheen never should have belonged to me in the first place. This must be my punishment for stealing someone else's position. I helplessly leaned against the back of the sofa and smiled. It seems I really don't have any strength left anymore. I don't know how long I sat there. I walked over and turned the photo frame on the table face down. Someone once said that love is something for a lifetime, but I truly don't love anymore. Chapter 2. When I flicked the lighter and held the flame to the curtain tassel, the phone rang. I turned my head and froze for a moment, but I still didn't answer. Yet the phone kept ringing. I picked it up. Hello? Why didn't you answer for so long? I stared at the flame that had begun to burn. What do you need? There's a problem with Selena's liver. You need to come to the hospital for a compatibility test. I cough. Are you listening? I nodded. The smoke grew thicker, and I started coughing violently. I understand. Why are you coughing so badly? There's too much smoke. It irritated my throat. I didn't answer again. I tossed the phone aside, grabbed the fire extinguisher, and put out the fire. After the flames were completely extinguished, I threw the extinguisher away and lay down on the corner of the sofa that had been scorched by smoke, gasping for breath. Finally, my hand moved to the position of my liver. The liver? Very well. If I can still help Selena, then I suppose this counts as atonement. Chapter 3. When I arrived at the hospital, the two elders were already waiting outside the ward. My mother stomped her foot. Why are you only getting here now? My gaze was indifferent. I only glanced lightly at these two parents of mine. My father pulled my mother's arm. Stop talking. We followed into the ward. I glanced toward the hospital bed, but the first person I saw was Theodore. I lowered my eyes, ignoring the flash of shock that crossed his gaze. I'm going to the company. He stood up and gave my parents a brief nod. No matter how composed a person was, when he brushed past me, there was still a hint of panic. I lifted my head and looked out the window. Of course, I miscarried twice, and he was never in the hospital. Never stayed by my side like this. I had long told myself not to be sad, but at this moment, my eyes still stung, though it only lasted for a brief moment. Soon, my eyes went dry again. Chapter 4. The person on the bed lay unconscious, completely pale. I raised my hand. What do you think you're doing? My mother shouted harshly, but my hand only gently fell on my sister's head, carefully smoothing her messy hair. After I finished, I finally looked at the two of them. When does the compatibility test start? My father was clearly startled for a moment by the deathly cold aura surrounding me. The doctor walked in. The donor has arrived? But the moment he saw me clearly, the doctor was visibly stunned for a second. Chapter 5. You're not suitable for compatibility testing. I didn't say a word. Camellia, are you deaf? Go back. I can do it, please. I only pleaded. Then I stood up and walked out. You just had a miscarriage days ago. Are you trying to die? At the doorway, I paused for a moment. It's just a compatibility test. I won't die from that. Behind me came a sigh. Chapter 6. There were far too many tests, so I simply stayed in the hospital for 3 days. It was a good chance to recuperate my body. 3 days later, the examinations were finally finished. I went up to the 5th floor. The scene of a family of 3 keeping watch together made me stop in my tracks. It was my father who noticed me first. He waved at me. I nodded and went in. Dad, Mom, Sis, how is it? Are the results out yet? Not yet. I'll head back first. My gaze briefly met Selena's, but the moment it did, she lowered her head. My mother glanced at me. All right, you can go. I nodded, but just as I reached the door, my father called out to me, Camellia, this pendant seems to be something Theodore dropped. Take it to him. I turned my head, looking at the jade gourd pendant he handed over. I froze for a moment. He dropped it the day Theodore came. I subconsciously glanced at the two people by the bed. Still, I reached out and took it. All right. After I stepped outside, voices came from inside again. What are you doing? Afraid she won't get to see Theodore? Their situation is really off. I'm afraid the two of them won't make it. In the quiet corridor, I lifted my foot and walked away. Chapter 7. I waited for half an hour. Only then did Theodore return after finishing his meeting. As soon as he entered the office and saw me, he clearly frowned. I drank the last sip of tea left in my cup and stood up. I took out the pendant from my body and handed it to him. I'm here to return this to you. He glanced at the item in my hand. His brow grew even more impatient. He didn't take it. Was it because I touched it, so he thought it was dirty? I turned around and placed it on his large desk, nodded, and prepared to leave. Wait. He walked toward the desk. I walked toward the door. I stopped. Is there something else? He pointed to the sofa. Sit. I stood there blankly for 2 seconds. He took off his coat but didn't say anything, yet his hand clenched into a fist. I took the initiative. You want to ask whether the compatibility test was successful? I was about to say the results weren't out yet, but my phone vibrated. I opened it. At the same time, his phone vibrated as well. I more or less understood. He had been keeping track of the hospital results all along. I smiled faintly. If there's nothing else, I'll go home first. I need to recuperate properly so that on the day of the surgery, I'll be in better condition. Just as I reached for the door handle, Camellia, after the transplant surgery, let's live properly together. The hand resting on the handle froze. What did he say? Was he willing to accept me now? Accept me, the woman he always called the worst of them all? But I don't want to live properly with you anymore. Theodore, I'm very tired. So tired. I don't have even a bit of strength left. I didn't answer him. I pulled the door open and left. Chapter 8. After returning home, I stewed a chicken and then left the kitchen, with nothing to do. I turned on the television. In the end, I somehow fell asleep, drinking chicken soup with the TV on. When I woke up the next day, I was still lying on the sofa. The room was completely quiet. Only sunlight rustled softly through the curtains and spilled inside. This place is really too big. I should raise a cat. Saying that, I grabbed my phone and started browsing online. But after actually choosing one, I backed out again. Raise a cat? No need. Raising a cat is something you do for a lifetime, not a momentary whim. Chapter 9. A week before the surgery, I was already hospitalized. My mother still came to see me. She sat there for a long while, and neither of us spoke. She didn't speak, and I didn't want to speak either. I'm sorry. All the fully equipped wards on the 5th floor are occupied. Otherwise, your father and I definitely would have booked one for you. I only nodded once, then turned my head to look outside. When you were little, you were quite talkative. How did you become like this now? She sighed, then stood up. I'll go upstairs first. I'll come see you again later. She left. I glanced at where she had just been sitting, and at the fruit she had placed by her feet. I smiled. The way she had looked just now, awkwardly picking up the fruit, fidgeting as she left, was actually a bit comical. So she can feel embarrassed too? I really can't understand her. Why couldn't she go upstairs first, put the fruit down, and then come back down to see me? But she despises me. How could she possibly make a special trip down just for me? Chapter 10. Today, after finishing the final round of examinations, the surgery would be tomorrow. I carried all the test reports back to my room. It was still as desolate as ever. I sat on the bed, my gaze unfocused. How could it be this empty? Oh, right. Didn't Theodore say he wanted to live properly with me? During the days I was recuperating at home, he never came back. This past week that I was hospitalized, he never came to see me once. Is this what living properly means? Oh, what he meant was, we would live properly only after the surgery. I know, he doesn't truly want to live a life with me. He just feels he owes me a debt, and is willing to repay it with his entire lifetime, as long as Selena is healthy. He has no other desires. Chapter 11. On the day of the surgery. Just as Selena and I were about to be wheeled in, Theodore finally rushed over. Dad, Mom, I'm so scared. It's all right. My good daughter, just treat it like taking a nap. The doctor said once it's replaced, you'll be healthy. My mother gently adjusted the hair beneath Selena's surgical cap. Theodore hurried over. Is the surgery starting now? Yes. Selena pulled her hand out of our mother's, grasped it again, and extended it toward Theodore. Theodore instinctively reached out as well, but Selena withdrew her hand again. She just smiled softly. Theodore, you're here. Theodore's hand froze in midair. After glancing at me, he quickly pulled it back. Yes, this surgery is already very advanced. Don't be afraid. Okay. Then she smiled again. Go say a few words to Camellia. She's been waiting for you to come. Theodore nodded and looked at me, but his lips seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. He couldn't say a single word. The surgical team came over, fully changed. All right, we're heading into the operating room now. Family members, please don't block the way. The gurneys began to roll. At that moment, my sister was still afraid. She reached out and called out the name in her heart. Theodore, don't be afraid. Before he could take her hand, Theodore steadied the bed rail instead. My gurney was in front. I watched this entire scene, calmly, quietly, indifferently, until the operating room doors slowly closed, and Theodore's standing figure was cut off. Bit by bit, I closed my eyes. At the moment the surgery was about to begin, I heard a voice of gratitude. Thank you, Camellia, for being willing to donate your liver for me. The anesthetic entered my body. At the moment I was about to lose consciousness, I whispered softly, you're welcome. Chapter 12. A long and numb dream. The dream was strange and chaotic. It felt like my eyes were covered in an empty corridor. Someone seemed to say, if you had known beforehand that this life would turn out like this, would you still have come? I turned my head toward the voice, but I couldn't see anything. In a heavy haze, I saw another operating room. Inside the ward, doctors were discussing, how did we cut so much? Didn't the agreement say 70%? This is fatal, cutting this much. Can the donor even recover? But aren't I still alive? Why did my body start to float? I floated, drifting farther and farther away. On the operating table, there was so much blood. So much blood. I drifted farther away. The doctors' voices carried over. They're sisters, but the mother clearly favors the older one. She deliberately wanted to cut this much to protect the sister. The younger one didn't object. She looked at the agreement at the time, then just stared blankly out the window and didn't say a word. Sigh. I really wanted to hug her out of pity. I don't know where I'm drifting to. Chapter 13. 4 days later, I slowly opened my eyes. My limbs felt as if they were nailed to the bed, completely without sensation. Only my eyes moved slightly. Everything I saw was white. You're awake. The nurse leaned over and smiled. I nodded. Would you like some water? I can help feed you. Thank you. She turned around, poured a little water, inserted a straw, and placed it by my lips. The moment I swallowed, it felt like my body was being torn apart with pain. Don't force it. Just sip gently. I took 2 small sips. The nurse withdrew. My sister. Her name is Selena, right? She woke up yesterday and has already been transferred out of the ICU. That's good. I nodded lightly. Well, the nurse hesitated, and I slowly looked at her. She gathered her courage and spoke again. Are you 2 biological sisters? I lowered my eyelids. And that handsome man, Is he your husband? Or your sister's husband? She sounded a bit nosy, but there was also pity in her eyes. I roughly guessed what had happened here between Selena and me. Over the past few days, I didn't answer. I heavily closed my eyes. Chapter 14. 2 days later, I was transferred out of the ICU. There was still no single room with full facilities. I hired a caregiver to fetch medicine and run errands. Most of the time, I was in a daze. My body was truly exhausted. Logically speaking, after surgery, with constant recuperation, I should have been looking better day by day, but I just couldn't wake up. I didn't even have the strength to go home, yet I didn't want to waste medical resources, so I could only pray that I'd regain enough strength to be discharged soon. Later on, my mother came to see me. She brought soup she had made. The caregiver was setting up the small table, about to serve food. She told the caregiver to step out. Lowering her head, she opened the thermos she brought and poured out fragrant fish soup. Don't eat those things. They're not nutritious. Have some soup. As she said this, her head was lowered, and she didn't look at me. But in that moment, I felt it wasn't that she didn't want to look at me. She couldn't bear to. I was so thin now, so very thin. Even my chin had become sharply pointed. I reached out to take the spoon, but my hands were covered in needle marks. Swollen and bruised, they trembled. She took the spoon from me and held the bowl, scooped up a spoonful and brought it to my lips. Drink. I froze for a moment, opened my mouth, and sipped the soup from the spoon. One spoonful, then another. She fed me patiently, without the slightest sign of irritation. That afternoon, even the sunlight seemed warm. She lowered her head, covered the soup container, and sat there for a while longer. Is there anything else you want to eat? I shook my head. I'm already very full. She nodded, and sat there a bit longer. I caught sight of a strand of white hair at her temples, probably from all the nights spent in the hospital. Then I'll head back. I'll come see you again next time. I nodded, but as she walked around the foot of the bed, I still felt uneasy. Mom, is my sister doing better? She nodded. She's recovering very well. She's already been discharged. But as soon as she said that, she realized she had said something wrong and stopped speaking. I froze instinctively. My sister had already been discharged. Her face showed clear awkwardness, but I smiled. Then I'm relieved. She nodded and walked out. Her figure grew farther and farther away. I grew anxious, wanting to see something more. Propping myself up, I got out of bed and slowly moved outside. I looked at the retreating back of the middle-aged woman. In the corridor, she walked farther and farther away. Will you come again next time? Probably not, but it's okay. Don't come anymore. I'll be discharged too. That figure disappeared. My tears finally fell, slowly, just like when I was a child. I was abandoned at an amusement park, watching that back grow farther and farther away. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't catch up. No one knows. I got lost at the age of 3. It wasn't until I was 13 that I returned to the Mao family. And no one knows either. During those 10 years I was left outside. How many beatings I endured. How many times I was deceived. But later, after returning to the Mao family, no one liked me. They said my eyes looked greedy and selfish. That I wasn't a good person. Hearing those things didn't hurt me that much. What hurt me the most was, I finally confirmed it. So it turns out I wasn't lost. Mom, that year, you abandoned me on purpose. Chapter 15. Discharged? Isn't this nonsense? I lowered my head slightly toward the attending physician. Sorry to trouble you, doctor. He scribbled his signature impatiently, tossed the papers at me, and went off to do rounds. I went home. I stood for a while in a patch of sunlight beneath the floor-to-ceiling window. Behind me, I heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. I turned my head. Theodore. Why did he come back again? He walked a few steps closer. Why did you get discharged early? He was wearing a light gray suit. Compared to his usual cold detachment, he seemed a little less sharp today. I felt a bit puzzled. I feel like I'm almost recovered. Almost recovered? His tone suddenly sharpened. Have you looked at yourself lately? I froze. My appearance? My hand suddenly moved to my abdomen. Theodore, do you remember what I looked like when I was pregnant with the first baby and the second baby? My stomach wasn't this flat, it was rounded. I smiled. Especially the first one. He was already 6 months old inside me. Back then, my belly looked like a balloon. And the second baby should have been a girl. She was very well behaved inside me. Very, very gentle. Theodore suddenly exploded, cutting me off. Stop talking. I lowered my head. After a moment of silence, I walked past him, past his trembling clenched fists. I sat in the room for a while. Continuous chiming sounds came from the master bedroom. When the sound grew louder, I walked over. At the doorway, I saw him packing things. Was he moving everything out? I spoke up first. There's too much stuff. One suitcase won't be enough. Should I call a moving company? I was just trying to be kind, but his back stiffened, as if startled. The frantic stuffing motion stopped. After a while, he finally looked at me. I'm not moving out. I'm just flying abroad for a trip, packing some luggage. I froze. Just a business trip? I nodded. He continued stuffing things inside, as if venting something, leaning against the doorframe. I couldn't bear to watch anymore. I walked in. I'll help you pack. He paused, slightly stunned, but he still put down the clothes in his hands and stepped aside. I carefully folded the clothes. He stood there for a moment. I'll step out to take a call. When he came back in, he froze. I had already packed everything neatly. Does the incision hurt? I lowered the hand I had been resting on my waist. No. He glanced at me, pressed his lips together, as if wanting to say something, but when he closed the suitcase, he noticed the stack of documents I had placed inside. You put all my documents in here? He seemed about to take them out. I helped him close the suitcase. Take them all. You'll need many documents when you're abroad. I pulled the zipper shut and snapped the lock into place. Then I nodded at him. Go quickly. Don't delay. After saying that, I turned to leave first. Behind me, my hand was suddenly grabbed. Camellia, what I said still counts. There's a problem with this project, so I have to fly over. At the latest. I'll be back in half a month. What you said? His phone vibrated. He let go and answered the call when he came out carrying the suitcase. I was still in the living room. We looked at each other. He turned around and walked toward the door. Theodore, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that back then, even though I knew you liked my sister, I didn't tell you that she liked you too. I really am very sorry. At the very end, I sincerely apologize to you. His back stiffened. Camellia, what is there to be sorry about? We're husband and wife now. The room fell silent. Aren't you going to wish me a safe trip? Have a safe journey. He didn't turn back, but after hearing my blessing, he lifted the suitcase, opened the door, and walked out. Chapter 16. The door closed. I collapsed into the sofa, and in the end, I hugged my head and started crying. Haha, idiot. A safe journey? No, it's goodbye forever. We were bound by karmic resentment, by sin. The sun sank bit by bit, turning into a sunset that drenched the earth in red light. I curled up on the sofa, hugging my knees, leaning against the window. In the end, I originally wanted to make a phone call to Mom, to ask her, why did she abandon me back then? I also wanted to hear my sister's voice. Was she almost recovered? I also wanted to call Dad one more time, but it seemed unnecessary. I was never someone people liked. Why go and burden them again? Look, the sunset is getting redder and redder. It looks like the blood gushing out from my incision. Today's sunset is really beautiful. My blood-covered hand finally clicked the lighter on and tossed it onto the sofa. Red light instantly illuminated the horizon. Amid the flames, my phone seemed to light up. A message came in. Wait for me to come back. I smiled and was instantly swallowed by the fire. Theodore's POV. Chapter 17. My wife is dead. She set the villa on fire and burned herself to death with her own hands. I held her, wrapped in a white sheet. My entire body was trembling. I couldn't make a sound. So many people surrounded us. but not a single one dared to come near me. The sky was drizzling like this. She was so light, so very light. When we first met, she even said she was a little chubby, 100 pounds. Later, when we got married, her figure became even more slender. After that, she lost a child and dropped to barely 90 pounds. In the end, our second child was also lost unexpectedly. She became even thinner, but that wasn't the end. She was visibly wasting away every single day. Sometimes, I didn't even dare to face her eyes. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, filled with confusion. She had once been such a girl who loved life. Yet in the end, she became silent. Silent. I know, the greatest responsibility lies with me. I failed her. I didn't cherish her properly. Haha, she was really so foolish. So foolish. I said it. Once I came back, everything would be fine. But even for this short amount of time, she was unwilling to wait. She was already exhausted beyond measure. She just wanted to sleep properly for once. With this sleep, she abandoned the person she once said she would love for a lifetime. The person she never wanted to part from. Chapter 18. The villa had already turned into ruins. I held her and stayed here for an entire night. Thinking back, since getting married, I had never accompanied her like this. In the business world, there was no hidden risk I couldn't detect. No matter how big the problem, I could always resolve it before it erupted. But my own wife had already decided to commit suicide, and I didn't see it. Was this heaven deliberately punishing my arrogance? My conceit? No, I sensed something was wrong, but it was too late. Before the plane took off, I sent a message. I still felt something was off. In the very moment the plane was about to depart, I ripped off my seatbelt and rushed off the plane. I told the driver to get home as fast as possible, but what I saw was still a sea of flames. I rushed inside. On the sofa, there was an enormous fire, swallowing everything, swallowing her. Why? Why did you choose such a decisive way to leave? Did life make you that hopeless? I didn't stop loving you. I just hurt you too much. I didn't know how to draw close to you. I was too proud, too self-assured. I thought, one day, we could still reconcile, still walk through this lifetime together. What's laughable is, I was trapped in my own world, and never once thought that what you were enduring had already been enough to destroy you completely. Chapter 19. Our first baby. She was always very careful, extremely cherished. When we first found out she was pregnant, I saw how overjoyed she was and even asked her. It was just a tiny clump of flesh. How could she be so excited? She pouted her lips. You don't understand. It means I'm going to be a mother. I love it so much. I'm going to be a very, very good mom. At that time, I still didn't know that she had once been lost as a child. Chapter 20. What the Mao family always told the outside world was that Camellia Mao had been raised in the countryside when she was young, and was only brought back at the age of 13, so I had absolutely no idea what she had actually gone through in her childhood. Before the surgery, I wanted to truly understand her. That was why I had my secretary investigate her past. With just one investigation, my heart shattered. So this was how unfortunate she had been. Lost at an amusement park at the age of 3, without a father, without a mother. Even more terrifying, according to the records, the word lost was clearly not accurate enough. Abandoned was the more appropriate term. No one could understand how a 3-year-old child could be discarded by her own mother like that. Chapter 21. Camellia couldn't find her mother. She cried, calling out everywhere, but her mother never came back for her. The amusement park closed. She hid in a corner, picked trash on the streets to eat, cold and starving. Later on, a kind-hearted person sent her to an orphanage. At the orphanage, her state was dull and vacant, as if she had suffered a tremendous shock. She wandered and hid for 3 days. During that time, bad people tried to stuff her into a sack. She was lucky enough to hide inside a dumpster, and wasn't discovered. At the orphanage, she remained dazed and slow, and was bullied by other children, until 2 years later. A couple came to adopt a child and brought her home, but the good days didn't last long. Under the couple's care, she slowly opened her heart. But soon after, the couple had a child of their own, and when they took her out to play, they abandoned her again. She became homeless once more, fighting stray dogs for food, returning to the days of scavenging from trash bins. During that time, she was briefly taken in by a restaurant owner, but raising one more child was truly no easy task. In the end, the owner also made her leave, even though she worked diligently in the shop, until she met an elderly woman who collected trash, who let her follow along. Seeing how well-behaved she was, the old woman brought her home. Only then did her life of wandering finally come to an end. From then on, she lived by collecting and selling trash with the old woman. She was far too well-behaved. In the end, the old woman even took out all her savings to send her to school in the suburbs. Even though the educational conditions there were extremely poor, she studied very hard. In truth, she and the old woman were each other's salvation. The old woman's son had passed away early. As she raised Camellia, she gradually treated her as her own granddaughter. They lived like this for 6.5 years, until the old woman passed away. Not long after, the Mao family found her. They handled the old woman's funeral and brought Camellia back home. After being brought home, Camellia should have been happy, right? She wasn't. She had always been severely deprived of love, desperately deprived. That's why, when she found out there was a little baby in her belly, she was so excited. She was about to have family, a child she would love dearly, protect carefully, was about to arrive. But that expectation ultimately fell apart and turned into a pain she bore with her own body. The baby never successfully came into this world and left in an extremely cruel way. It wasn't that she failed to protect the baby. It was me. I harmed her. I harmed the child. I couldn't make it to the appointment. Why didn't I cancel that dinner in advance? Why did I let her go, full of anticipation? In the end, at that desolate mountain villa, she was surrounded and hunted down. Her entire body was severely injured, blood everywhere. When she begged me for help, I was still on the road, rushing back from another province, and in the passenger seat beside me sat my former goddess, her sister. She must have been heartbroken, truly heartbroken, completely despairing, wasn't she? Even though later, I made the people who hurt her live lives worse than death, it couldn't bring our child back. The ones who harmed her were my defeated rivals in the business world. They had always wanted to ruin me. That day, when Camellia was waiting for me at the mountain villa, she ran into that group. They were also there for a banquet. There were blows from clubs. There were hard leather soles stomping on her abdomen. She cried, and the child was shattered. After the first child was lost, she became very quiet, but she was a sensible person. At family gatherings, when dealing with relatives and outsiders, she would still hide her sorrow deep in her heart. What she should do, what she should say, she never made a mistake, but I could feel it. Her exhaustion, her weariness. I didn't know what I could do to make her return to who she used to be. She didn't hate anyone either. That day, I should have been able to make it back, but I happened to run into a car accident and was delayed. Her sister was also just coincidentally in another province, returning for the holidays, so she came back with me. I think back to how Camellia and I, step by step, became husband and wife. We didn't date for many years. We were just friends. I always thought she was a good person, kind, with a good personality, but I felt that kind of personality lacked challenge. So during our school years, I leaned more toward the cold and aloof Selena. However, I was simply too busy. I never truly pursued anyone. It was after graduation, when I had just entered a dinner engagement. Someone slipped something into my drink, and Camellia happened to be working part-time at that hotel. At that time, I didn't dare trust anyone. I hurriedly called her, asking her to come upstairs quickly. I originally wanted her to take me to the hospital, but the drug was too strong. The moment I touched her soft body, I lost control. I knew she liked me. I held her tightly. Camellia, I will take responsibility. She was flustered, helpless. But that night, she clenched her teeth and endured all of my roughness. After that, she never brought it up on her own, but I still went to her home proactively and discussed marriage. The Mao family was completely stunned. How did we suddenly end up together? We hadn't even dated. How were we already talking about marriage? But that day, in Camellia Mao's eyes, I saw a clear, bright light. At the very least, she still wanted to marry me. Both young people agreed, and so, I smoothly married Camellia. After marriage, she was a very good, very obedient wife. She didn't compete for attention. She didn't call me again and again when I was out socializing, urging me to come home. Instead, when I returned home, the lights were always still on, and there was always hangover soup prepared. But people really are despicable. What should have been a warm, loving couple, yet I kept telling myself that I married her out of responsibility, and so I treated her. Sometimes cold, sometimes warm. At the very least, what I gave her was completely unmatched with the overflowing love she gave me. Or rather, in this marriage, all I gave her was a house and the title of Mrs. Cheen. Chapter 23. In the middle of all this, when I found out that Selena had also liked me all along, my anger only intensified. I tested the waters. I asked Camellia, "Do you know if your sister has someone she likes?" She thought for a long time, then shook her head, saying she didn't know. At that point, I truly hated her. All the signs pointed to the fact that she knew Selena liked me. Yet when I was seeking an answer, she said she didn't know. In that instant, I felt she looked obedient and gentle on the surface. But deep down, her mind was exceptionally calculating. I started believing what my friends said. A woman's heart is as unfathomable as the ocean floor. Women look pretty and innocent, but inside, it's like palace intrigue dramas. When I exposed the lie she told back then, her face turned deathly pale. She was completely frightened out of her wits. From then on, I stayed at a hotel for a period of time. I completely gave her the cold shoulder, but she didn't make a fuss. Only after we had been separated for 3 months did she call me, saying, "How about we get a divorce?" Just those few words, in an utterly calm tone, without a trace of apology. I was furious, but later, when I thought about it, what right did I have to blame her for this? If I liked someone, shouldn't I have gone after them myself? Why ask a bystander for answers? Besides, I had long noticed how much she liked me. When I asked her that question, wasn't that itself a kind of cruelty toward her? Moreover, she only said she didn't know. She never said that she didn't like me. And besides, who actually understood her situation in the Mao family? A father who didn't dote on her, a mother who didn't love her. As for her sister, she was someone who, even at school, didn't want to acknowledge having a younger sister. Wherever she went, it seemed there was never any sunlight that could shine on her. Chapter 23. When Camellia mentioned divorce, I panicked. Yes, someone who never had a temper, after enduring my cold violence, actually said, "Let's divorce." Was she tired? Had she reached her limit? But then I realized I had actually grown very dependent on her. During our separation, I felt deeply unaccustomed. Everything felt off. I went back home. I said the company's 30th anniversary celebration was coming up. She was the hostess, and I would take her to attend. She fell silent for a few seconds, then nodded. The divorce crisis was considered over, and 2 years later, after her body had finally recovered, she became pregnant again. After the confirmation at the hospital, I saw the slight upward curve of her lips. I had an illusion that the gloom she carried on her body had finally shaken loose a little. This child was here to heal her. without a doubt. This time, she was even more careful, even more cautious. All the sharp edges in the house were padded, afraid she might bump into something. Anti-slip mats were placed one by one. The stuffy, cloying, nourishing soups. She pinched her nose and drank them every day. Yet even with such care, such anticipation, this child still couldn't be saved. It was as if the sky had suddenly collapsed. But that child should never have had an accident. On the day of the reunion festival, we celebrated at the old residence. Also present were Father Mao, Madame Mao, and Selina. After the dinner, everyone sat in the courtyard. The mooncakes had just been served, when suddenly, the Tibetan Mastiff kept at the old house went berserk and charged over. It lunged at Selina. Selina froze in terror. I kicked the Mastiff away. The Mastiff that was knocked to the ground suddenly bared its teeth and charged toward Camellia, who was standing alone off to one side. Danger! Bright red blood dripped down, staining the grass red. She looked at the blood on her palm. My child. I held her, my own body trembling. My throat was filled with questions, with sounds that couldn't come out. Why? Why did it turn out like this? Her dress, which had been snow white, looked as if it had been pulled out of a dye vat. At the entrance to the operating room, she grabbed me, her whole body covered in blood. She said only one sentence: "Save the child." Not me. I didn't dare look at her. How could we save the child? There was too much blood. I only prayed that she would be all right. Chapter 24. A long, cold surgery. I slid down along the wall and squatted, holding my head. There was a faint choking sound in my throat. Why? Was it really because I acted too ruthlessly? Was heaven taking my child away? But was I really that ruthless? In the business world, it's survival of the fittest. I only ever protected my own interests. The operating room lights went out. President Theodore. I'm sorry. The child still couldn't be saved. I reached out and gently touched the colorless person on the gurney. She slept quietly. Like this. Just sleep peacefully for a few days. I know. You're too tired. I stayed at the hospital for 3 days. She still didn't wake up. The out-of-province project ran into a landslide. The site fell into chaos. On the third night, I had no choice but to fly over to command on site. I arranged a caregiver to look after her. When my plane landed, I received a call from the caregiver saying she had woken up. I finally let out a breath. "Miss, it's okay. Don't cry. Auntie, my baby is gone." If she had been born, she might have been a little girl. My heart clenched violently. "Sir, would you like to speak to the miss?" I didn't dare. I didn't know how to face her. "I'm busy here. Take good care of her." The call ended, but I was completely numb. My heart hurt. It hurt terribly. Not long ago, I had attended a first birthday banquet. That baby, chubby and round, so lovable. When my child is born, I'll hold one too. I'll give the whole company 3 days off. No, not a first birthday banquet. A first birthday takes too long to wait. I want to hold a 1-month celebration. I want everyone, all partners, all friends, to know that I, Theodore, also have the most adorable child in the world. But I didn't protect my child. My baby. Chapter 25. Camellia didn't stay hospitalized for many days before being discharged. When I came back, she was sitting blankly at home. I went over and hugged her. "Theodore, have you been very busy lately? From now on, I'll stay with you properly." She shook her head. "I'm quite fine. The house is quiet. It's nice." She stood up and left, returned to her room, closed the door. For 2 consecutive days, I stayed at home with her, but she didn't speak and didn't want to acknowledge me. Yet, this year, my company was facing too many crises. Capital forces were besieging us one after another. After just 2 days of not handling matters, even the vice president couldn't hold on anymore. I packed a few clothes, in case the situation became urgent, and I had to fly to the project site again. I carried the suitcase out. I wanted to go hug her, but she didn't look at me at all. What I could feel was her hatred. I stood there helplessly for 2 seconds, then left quietly. Once I stabilized the company, I'll take her traveling, make up for everything properly. But why is it that heaven never gives people a chance to catch their breath? Selena was suddenly diagnosed with liver cancer. What I never expected was that they wanted Camellia to donate her liver. They came to me first, as if this matter only required my consent. Whether Camellia agreed or not didn't matter. Faced with such an unreasonable demand, I refused outright. Camellia had just miscarried. Donate her liver? Wasn't that taking her life? But they truly loved Selena and still brought Camellia in. When Camellia arrived at the hospital, she must have misunderstood, thinking I was here taking care of Selena. No, I had only been there for 20 minutes to check Selena's medical records. I know several specialists. Liver donation was impossible if it wasn't too severe. I could recommend experts for treatment. When Camellia walked in and saw me, I inexplicably panicked. The situation was bad. Mother Mao was determined to find a liver source. I had nothing left to say to this family, so I left in a hurry. I had stayed up all night the day before. I was already exhausted. When I left, I was also firmly convinced that Camellia would never agree. The Mao family treated her terribly. Now that something happened, they thought of her? She would never agree. And yet, the match was successful. And yet, Camellia's stance was, she was willing to donate. Me? Chapter 26. Ever since Camellia agreed to donate, I'd been bottling up a fire inside me every single day. At that time, I was also locked in a standoff with foreign capital. Those damn foreign devils. One day, right in the middle of negotiations, that nameless rage surged up. I slammed my foot out and kicked him hard. One kick straight into the leg of that foreign bastard, who had been rambling on endlessly. He had been deliberately blocking me, stalling the approval of my overseas project. Chapter 27. The surgery still went ahead, and it was only after the surgery ended that I found out Madame Mao was truly ruthless. She actually had the doctors cut away 70% of Camellia's liver. What kind of concept is that? She didn't care at all whether Camellia lived or died. But what about me? It wasn't until the moment of surgery that I rushed back from overseas. I had clearly instructed the doctor to explain the risks to Camellia, to make sure he talked her out of donating before the surgery. Damn it. Later, he couldn't get through to me on the phone and actually told me nothing. Heh, to hell with him. He said that since I didn't answer the phone, it meant I had tacitly agreed. That bastard of a doctor. I really wanted to kill him. Country H. This damned country. It must be my natural nemesis. Not only did the project keep failing to move forward, I also got detained for beating up that foreigner. By the time I chartered a plane back, it was already too late. And there's also my damned personality. Even when facing an extremely dangerous surgery, I still didn't know how to say even a single sentence to Camellia. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Even though my heart and mind were full of her, when I finally rushed back, I couldn't say a single word. In the business world, I'm always the one who strikes first. But in love, why have I always been passive? Always waiting for others to make the first move. Waiting for others to speak first. Chapter 28. I had noticed something abnormal. I saw that scorched black patch on the curtain, but I never thought that Camellia had lit it herself. I only assumed it was an accident. I even felt relieved. Thankfully, it had been put out in time. Thankfully, Camellia hadn't met with an accident. Chapter 29. Today is Camellia's funeral, which also means her life stopped at the age of 26. In this world, there will never be another Camellia. Perhaps there may be someone with the same name, but it will never be her. President Theodore, please accept our condolences. Pale white chrysanthemums, placed down one by one, surrounding Camellia. She seems to be smiling, smiling up at the blue sky. She is finally free. All the suffering that was imposed upon her can finally leave her. No one loved her, and she no longer needs anyone's love. Chapter 30. At the solemn memorial, a cry suddenly rang out. I looked over. Madame Mao had already fainted into Mao father's arms. Theodore, I said coldly. Mr. Mao, please take your family back. Mao father looked stunned. Even Selina, who still looked ill, was confused, but under my cold gaze, they placed the flowers, bowed, and all left. In the light drizzle, Camelia's funeral came to an end. She was buried here, sleeping forever. Chapter 31. Half a year later, I asked Mao father and Madame Mao to meet at a tea house. Yesterday I went to see Camelia Mao. The cemetery was very clean. There was sunlight yesterday. It shone on her. Madame Mao's eyes reddened as she spoke, lifting her hand to wipe the corner of her eye. I said nothing. I poured the freshly brewed tea for the two of them. Mao father spoke. Theodore, now that your company has stabilized, don't push yourself so hard. I nodded. Uncle, Auntie, please try this tea, an archival edition of Jean Junmei. Ever since I found out that Camelia had been deliberately abandoned as a child, I only addressed the two of them as uncle and auntie. After one cup of tea was slowly finished, I refilled both of their cups. Under their puzzled gazes, I finally spoke calmly. From what I understand, Camelia was never favored in the Mao family. Yet she truly was your biological daughter. May I ask, why was she unloved? The moment I said this, Madame Mao's face turned deathly pale. Theodore, why are you suddenly asking this? Curiosity. The two of them remained silent for a long time. No one spoke. I found records indicating that back then, she wasn't sent to the countryside at all, but was lost. Or rather, directly abandoned. Is that correct? Madame Mao's teacup instantly fell to the ground. Her face filled with panic. Mao father was also shocked. Abandoned? That's impossible. Camelia was lost. But Madame Mao lowered her head, as if her secret had been exposed. Xiaoying, back then at the amusement park, did Camelia get lost? Or did you abandon her? Crying, arguing. The noise was overwhelming, chaotic. I didn't have the time to wait. I flipped open the latest file. Madame Mao, is it because when you gave birth to Camelia Mao, you discovered that Mr. Mao was having an affair, and even had a son outside? You believed that it was because you didn't give birth to a son that Mr. Mao cheated, didn't you? So you hated Camelia, hated that she wasn't born male, and in a fit of rage, you abandoned her. Both of them collapsed at once. In the end, I escorted the two of them downstairs and into the car. I closed the car door for them. The car drove away. My assistant walked over. President Theodore, is it done? The assistant nodded. Chapter 32. The next day, the news that Mao father's car had plunged down a mountainside made the headlines. They didn't die. I never intended for the two of them to die. Just one disfigured, the other confined to a wheelchair for life. If they went down now, wouldn't they just meet Camelia again? A few days later, Selina came to see me on her own initiative. She guessed it, that the car accident involving those two old people was my doing. She smiled bleakly. Are you going to take her life too? Camelia's liver is inside my body. I lit a cigarette. Why don't you just go die yourself? She froze, staring at me in disbelief. I told her to leave. A few days later, I heard she had signed up to teach in the countryside. At least, she has some self-awareness. Her life was exchanged with Camelia's life. Camelia protected her. As for Mao father's illegitimate son, when that child was 5 years old, it was discovered he wasn't even his. Retribution. Chapter 33. Later on, in a foreign country, I finally got close to that man whose wealth rivaled nations, whose power reached everywhere. Mr. Smith. I first bent down and lit a cigar for him, then sent him on his way. Watching him fall coldly to the ground, I sneered. So the rumors were true. No one ever walked away alive from his hands. That year, Smith Capital, led by him, blocked me at every turn. My company ran into trouble one incident after another. On the day Camellia committed suicide. If this overseas project had not gone wrong, I wouldn't have prepared to go abroad, and I would have had time to stay home and accompany her properly. Maybe none of this would have happened. Chapter 33. I chartered a plane and set off to return home. Outside the window, it was still stormy weather. I closed the window and had a dream. I dreamed of Camellia, dreamed that she was still pregnant, that we were welcoming our little baby. In the dream, everything was so blissful. In the dream, the plane suddenly began to shake violently. Something's wrong, the plane has lost control. The end.